Joining us now is Carrie Krawiec, a therapist at the Birmingham Maple Clinic, back with us once again on the Oakland County MegaCast. Carrie, thank you for being with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning.
Appreciate having you on. Good morning to you as well. So, parents, we'll start with parenting. Parents love to encourage their kids to go out and have their own little adventures, explore, kind of be creative outside of the home, get away from those video games and technology, and explore the outside world. Often when they're doing that, they send their kids out to some sort of activity or just to play outside, and they'll say the words, "Be careful." You are in the school of thought that "be careful" may not actually be a very helpful phrase to be telling these kids when they are going out and doing these various things. Let's talk about that. Start off with why, what the flaws are with "be careful" and what is a better approach to encouraging safety for your kids.
Sure, absolutely. So first of all, I'm a totally guilty offender. I have a 7.5-year-old and a 4-year-old, so I say be careful probably 1,000 times a day. But the problem with it, especially at different ages, like for example, the kids as young as mine, is that be careful is very vague. It doesn't really give them an idea of what you want them to do. It gives them no roadmap. So maybe an older child might know what you mean when you say be careful, but a younger child would need a specific direction, like hold hands, look both ways, slow down, use walking feet. A younger child would need a very specific direction of what you want to do with what part of their body to understand what you mean. The other thing that's wrong with be careful is that it sort of implies everything is dangerous. And it also kind of requires your kid to have you there to kind of oversee. And in some ways, you might be over assessing their risk, and they may not either not trust you, like that you know what's going on, which would be the worst case scenario. If you say, oh, those monkey bars are dangerous, and there's 16 kids on the monkey bars, they're going to start to trust other kids over you. But also you want the opportunity. I think the most important thing as parents is you want the opportunity to congratulate your kids for their choices, to boost their esteem. So a better way would be to say, wow, like this morning, it's very slick outside this morning, to say, whoa, look at this driveway. It's so icy. What is your plan to get from here to the car? And see if they can give you some ideas. I'm going to hold on. I'm going to walk slow. I'm going to, walk on the grass. And then you get to say, wow, brilliant idea. You're really thinking. I love the way your mind works. And that's the kind of stuff that boosts your kids' esteem and makes them more likely to use it on their own the next time.
It's great for younger kids, that method, too, because they're still so plastic. They're able to then develop some creativity and some independent thought and think ahead on certain things that may be a hazard to them from an early age. For those that are older children that are in their they're in their late tween years or in their teen years, they've been hearing their parents say be careful for so long. What are some of the flaws in that directive to them, especially given that they have developed a greater sense of independence by that point in their life?
Sure. Well, so I think, right, like by that time, you're probably going to get a kid go, Mom, sure. Like, I know. So like, right, it'll feel to them kind of juvenile and like you don't trust them. And like that you don't have confidence or in their competence. And so I think to start kind of, you can do the same way, like, and even take ownership. God, like as my instinct as mom, I want to say be careful, but I trust that you're going to be careful. But why don't you tell me what you're going to do to be careful? And I know you got it, but like, just let me know what you got and have a little, and then you avoid the argument about it. And instead they're informing you of what's going to go on in their life.
And so other just general words or phrases, you mentioned that specificity would be a better way to address encouraging being careful for a parent to their child. But are there other general phrases that will maybe take a child in a different direction without, especially an older child that has heard be careful their entire life, without seeming like I don't trust you or I don't think you have the capacity to make smart decisions?
Sure. So I think always with kids, like we said, to be specific, behavioral, to also, as often as you can, avoid stop directions or negative directions and instead start directions. So what do you want your child to do? It's helpful for the child because, like I said, it gives them a roadmap so they know what your expectation is. But it's helpful for you because you can catch it. it's you say stop running or, stop doing that or whatever it is. And then you don't always stop and say, wow, that was great listening. But if you give them a start direction, it offers you the opportunity to see it in play and catch it like, wow, I saw you do exactly what I told you to. That was great. So it's good to also, rewarding for parents to recognize that, our kids really are listening to us. It's very easy to think of all the times they ignored what we said. And it helps us to kind of say, wow, I said this and they did this. Like, that's a win-win.
We're joined by Carrie Krawiec. She is a therapist at the Birmingham Maple Clinic, joining us on the MegaCast. Carrie, of course, as we've talked about so many times before, there continues to be an impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on children, on families, on individuals. As we're starting to see things really take a more positive turn toward us maybe being able to put COVID-19 in the rearview mirror, we're seeing the mask mandates sort of go away, those mask requirements in certain businesses, suggestions from government agencies and public health agencies start to dwindle away. That sort of stark transition from where we were just a few weeks ago, where we were near it, where we were still at the peak of a major surge, the largest surge of cases of COVID-19 statewide and really across the nation since the onset of the pandemic. How can that sort of a transition, kind of that stark transition between in the thick of a surge to now it looks like this may be the end of things, that coming out of this pandemic is going to be just as complicated psychologically, I would imagine, as it was going into it and making all those various changes. How should we be approaching that as individuals and then as people that are interacting with others and are interacting with their families to help each other along?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you really touched the base. Although it feels stark in many ways, and maybe for others it's felt gradual, this change, but that, each person, I really think is offering grace to yourself and grace to the rest of your members of your household or your community, patience that, not everybody's going to have the same amount of readiness to every situation. Even looking at the kids this week, this is their first week with no masks in their little educational careers. And, some are thrilled, some are uncertain, some are still anxious about the potential of infection. And so just recognizing to really, of course, coaching your kids not to, tease or confront other students who maybe have a different position than them or their households have a different position than them. But to also within your household, really accept and respect each person's readiness to do each sort of level of things, whether, we're talking about spring break coming up. Some families will be on their airplanes for the first time in 3 or more years. And, just being patient that there is going to be anxiety, there is going to be uncertainty. That would all be normal. That keeping in mind, we want to think about intensity, frequency, and duration. So as we pass through time, if anxiety gets lower, it's not as strong, it doesn't last as long, that's a good thing. If we stay at a heightened anxiety despite everybody else kind of moving on and things seemingly fine, then that would be cause for concern.
We're joined by Carrie Krawiec from the Birmingham Maple Clinic, joining us on the MegaCast. As we're approaching that too, with kids, you mentioned the kids that are going back into school with masks off for the first time. For many of them that either started kindergarten or were in the early years of their schooling when the pandemic began. Now they're going back into there, but they're also going back into other areas of their life as well. And this is all that they've known so far, really, in their youth is COVID-19, or at least in their schooling age. How should parents be approaching explaining to them what may be even more confusing for a child coming out of a pandemic where this is a crisis, this is how life has been normal, but that's not how normal really ever was, and now we're going away from that.
Sure. Again, I don't know that I think it would be tailored to each kid at each age or stage, but I think for one, I just think of people I've talked to personally or professionally, something that's coming up, especially like you said, for those youngest ones that perhaps didn't have preschool or daycare in their early part of their life, were kind of thrust into full-time school at this stage, but had been kind of insulated by their family for 2 years, where maybe, everybody kind of gets their quirks and they get the rules. Now they're in a school situation where the rules are changing, the expectations are changing, and it feels exceptionally overwhelming. So, the little kindergartners and first graders, they're like, really, really taking on a lot of what's expected of me now. And wouldn't it be a lot easier if I just stayed home because that seem to make a lot more sense to me. So again, just really being patient, working on, like what are their strategies? How can they calm themselves? Who can they ask for help if they need them? What kinds of things can they maybe think about in their mind, remind themselves, that they are able to get through these days. At different ages and stages, like I said, it would be different. I think it would just be normal to feel uncomfortable, but that also, I think also educating everybody, not in our families and our households, that it's okay to feel uncomfortable. And actually, it's even okay to feel a little bit stressed. Like, we're human beings. We were meant to do great things. And it wasn't meant to just be easy and comfortable all the time. And in fact, it's the best for us to challenge ourselves a little bit. So be that kind of attitude of positivity to say, I know you can do it. I know we all can do it, and we can do hard things.
We're joined by therapist Carrie Krawiec from the Birmingham Maple Clinic on the MegaCast. Carrie, just another couple of minutes with you. And so I wanted to ask, because of course with COVID-19, we've been seeing crisis after crisis after crisis within this crisis that have been reported on, that have been in the news, that have been all the discussion on the town. And it's kind of in a similar sense with the crisis overseas in Ukraine. We're seeing a lot of different talks about the way that our country and the United States is involved, our allies are involved. It seems to be this worldwide pressure cooker that everyone's looking out on, and that can cause a lot of anxiety for people all across the world in various situations as they're looking at that and considering what role they or their country may be playing in that going forward. What suggestion do you have for people to kind of decompress themselves from that pressure without ignoring the worldwide implications that crises like the Russian invasion of Ukraine
Sure.
obviously have?
Sure. I mean, I think when you and I talked last, we kind of talked about this. During the pandemic, we were told about viral load, which was the amount of infection, the amount of symptoms, the amount of problems we got was directly related to how much disease we were presented with. And I think the same philosophy goes with the information that we take in. So yeah, once upon a time in a war many, many moons ago, you wouldn't have heard about it unless via postcard 30 days later. But now we get information constantly. We talk about it. We hear it on our news. We get it on our phones. We get it on our iWatches. Like, we get information all the time. The sheer volume of information impacts how much it affects us. So now some of us are more resilient to it than others. We've been talking about kids this morning. Kids are going to have either in some ways their own resiliency. It's going to fly right over their head and they're not going to understand it at all. For other kids, they're just going to soak it up and see the world as a scary place. I mean, I think the best thing that families can do is really restrict the kind of information they're getting, the sources of information they're getting, and even the need to get it constantly. That, like, perhaps prescribing a time a day to scan the news and have that be sort of very, predictable and routine, and perhaps even cushion it in before or after something more calming or soothing. I think returning to, of course, more time, like we said, more time outdoors, taking walks in nature, reading, doing creative endeavors. Those are the things that really insulate and protect us from the stress of just consuming information that seems dark, dreary, and bleak.
Carrie, we appreciate your time. Anything else at this moment that parents or individuals should be considering with everything else that's going on, or any other tips at this moment in time to protect our mental health throughout our community?
I think you had mentioned some days soon we'll have a 60-degree day. Like I said, get outside, take a walk, enjoy some nature. Those are really such a factor for resiliency, for mindfulness, for meditative experience, which really help us throughout our entire lifetime.
Carrie, we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.